Hi everyone, welcome back to a new Roblox story. This time, it's not a creepy horror story, just a chill, relaxing tale about 99 nights in the forest that will slowly make you sleepy and help you drift off to sleep. Maya loved the gentle crackling sound her campfire made in the evening. She had been living in the peaceful forest for 27 nights now, and each day she learned something new about making her little camp more comfortable and cozy. Tonight, she was trying a new technique for building the perfect fire. She had gathered different types of wood during the day, soft pine that caught easily, sturdy oak that burned long and steady, and sweet-smelling cedar that filled the air with a lovely fragrance. Maya arranged the wood carefully, just like her grandfather had taught her when she was little. First, she made a small nest of dry grass and thin twigs. Then she added slightly larger sticks in a teepee shape, leaving gaps for air to flow through. Finally, she surrounded it all with her special logs, each one placed with care and attention. When she lit the fire, it caught perfectly. The flames danced upward in beautiful orange and yellow spirals, warming her face and hands. The light pushed back the gathering darkness of evening, creating a safe, comfortable circle around her simple shelter. Maya had spent weeks improving her little forest home. Her shelter was no longer just a basic lean-to made of branches. She had woven walls from supple young trees, creating a cozy space that felt almost like a real house. She had even made a comfortable bed from layers of soft pine needles and moss, covered with a blanket she had crafted from plant fibers. Around her campfire, Maya had arranged smooth stones she had collected from the nearby stream. Some were flat and perfect for sitting on. Others were round and warm, perfect for heating up and tucking into her bed on chilly nights. She had also gathered colourful pebbles that sparkled in the firelight, arranging them in pretty patterns around the fire ring. Her camp was surrounded by useful things she had made during her forest stay. Baskets woven from thin branches held her collection of nuts, berries, and dried fish. Clay pots she had shaped and fired in her campfire held fresh water from the stream. Wooden tools she had carved hung from the branches of nearby trees: spoons, bowls, a fishing pole, and even a small flute she played in the evenings. Maya picked up her flute now and played a gentle melody as the fire settled into steady, glowing coals. The music floated through the quiet forest, mixing with the soft sounds of evening. The distant hoot of an owl, the whisper of wind through leaves, the gentle bubbling of the stream. As she played, Maya thought about how much she had learned during her time in the forest. When she first arrived, she could barely start a fire and didn't know which berries were safe to eat. Now she felt completely at home among the trees. She could find food anywhere, make tools from branches and stones, and read the weather by watching the clouds and feeling the wind. The forest had become her friend rather than a challenge to survive. She knew where the sweetest berries grew, which trees had the strongest branches for building, where the fish liked to rest in the cool parts of the stream. She had even learned to recognize the calls of different birds and could tell what time of day it was just by listening to their songs. Maya finished her song and set the flute aside. She added one more log to her fire, watching as it caught and sent up a shower of tiny sparks that looked like falling stars. The log settled with a soft whoosh, and the flames settled back into their steady, hypnotic dance. She pulled out her journal, pages of bark that she wrote on with charcoal from her fire. Every night, she recorded what she had learned, what she had seen, and how she felt. Tonight she wrote about the perfect fire, about the way the cedar smoke smelled like peace, about how the warm light made everything feel safe and cozy. As Maya wrote, she heard the gentle sounds of other campers in the distance. Quiet conversations, soft laughter, the occasional strum of a guitar. She wasn't alone in the forest. There were many other people learning to live peacefully among the trees. Sometimes they would visit each other, sharing food and stories and techniques for forest living. Maya closed her journal and banked her fire for the night, covering the coals with a layer of ash so they would stay warm until morning. She arranged her warm stones around her bed and settled down on her comfortable nest of pine needles. Through the woven walls of her shelter, she could see stars beginning to appear between the tree branches. The night sounds of the forest were gentle and comforting. The soft calls of night birds, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, the constant soothing whisper of wind through leaves. Maya pulled her plant fiber blanket up to her chin and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new discoveries, new skills to learn, new improvements to make to her forest home. But for now, she was perfectly content to drift off to sleep beside her perfect campfire, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of the forest night. The fire crackled softly as the last log settled into glowing coals, and Maya fell asleep with a smile on her face, dreaming of all the beautiful days still to come in her forest home. When Maya woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the trees in golden beams that danced across her camp. She stretched and yawned, feeling completely rested and peaceful. The fire had burned down to warm embers just as she had planned, and she quickly added some small twigs to get the flames going again. As she prepared her breakfast of berries and fish she had caught the day before, Maya noticed something new. There was a piece of bark paper tucked under one of the stones around her fire ring. She picked it up and found a message written in charcoal, just like her own journal entries. "Hello, neighbor. My name is Sam. I live in the camp by the big oak tree to the south. Would you like to share breakfast and compare notes about forest life? I have some honey I collected yesterday, and I would love to trade stories about our adventures. Leave a message under the same stone if you are interested. Your forest friend, Sam." Maya smiled as she read the note. She had heard Sam's voice in the evenings, singing songs around his campfire, but they had never met face to face. She quickly wrote a reply on another piece of bark, accepting his invitation and suggesting they meet by the stream that ran between their camps. After banking her fire carefully and gathering some of her best berries as a gift, Maya walked through the dappled morning sunlight toward the stream. The forest was alive with the cheerful sounds of morning, birds singing their dawn chorus, squirrels chattering in the trees, and the gentle splash of fish jumping in the water. She found Sam sitting on a fallen log by the stream, whistling a tune while he watched the water flow past. He was about her age, with curly brown hair and a friendly smile. Next to him sat a clay pot filled with golden honey that gleamed in the sunlight. "You must be Maya," Sam said cheerfully, jumping up from the log. "I'm so glad you wanted to meet. I've been hoping to make friends with other forest campers." Maya showed him her basket of berries, and they found a nice grassy spot by the water to spread out their breakfast. As they ate, they shared stories about their life in the forest. Sam had been camping for about 3 weeks, just a few days less than Maya. He had started as a complete beginner too, but like Maya, he had learned quickly and grown to love forest life. "I chose to learn the scavenger skills," Sam explained as he drizzled honey over some berries. "It helps me find useful things that other people might miss. Yesterday I found a whole bag of metal scraps near an old abandoned shed. I can use them to make better tools." Maya nodded with interest. She had heard about the different skills people could learn in the forest. Some people became excellent hunters, learning to track animals and understand their behavior. Others became farmers, growing amazing crops in small forest clearings. Still others became rangers, learning to explore the deepest parts of the forest safely. "I think I want to learn the camper skills," Maya said thoughtfully. "I love making my camp comfortable and cozy. I want to learn how to build even better shelters and keep my fire burning perfectly all the time." After breakfast, Sam showed Maya some of the interesting things he had found during his scavenging adventures. He had collected all sorts of useful items, pieces of rope, metal containers, colourful stones, and even some old tools that just needed a little cleaning to work like new again. Maya was fascinated by a small metal box that Sam had discovered. When they opened it, they found it contained several unusual keys made of different coloured metals. There was a red key that gleamed like copper, a blue key that shimmered like steel, a yellow key that looked almost like gold, and a grey key that seemed to absorb light. "I wonder what these keys open," Maya said, turning the red one over in her hands. It felt warm and smooth, and there were tiny symbols carved into its surface. "I found them near some caves deeper in the forest," Sam explained. "The caves have doors with matching coloured locks, but I haven't been brave enough to explore them alone. Maybe we could investigate together sometime." Maya felt a little flutter of excitement at the idea of exploration and discovery. She had heard other campers talking quietly about mysteries in the forest, about places that held secrets and treasures. There were rumours of missing children who had gotten lost in the woods, and some people said they were working together to help find them and bring them safely home. As they talked and shared their breakfast, Maya and Sam heard the sound of approaching footsteps. 3 more campers emerged from the forest, walking along the stream bank. They looked friendly and were smiling as they approached. "Good morning," called the first camper, a girl with long black hair tied back with a vine. "I'm Luna. We saw your smoke signals and hoped we might join you for morning conversation." The second camper was a tall boy with red hair, who introduced himself as River. The third was a smaller girl with bright blonde hair named Sunny. All 3 looked happy and healthy, with the same peaceful contentment that Maya had seen in Sam. "We've been exploring together for about 2 weeks, Luna explained as they all settled on logs and stones around the stream. "We started as strangers but quickly became close friends. There's something magical about sharing adventures in the forest." River nodded enthusiastically. "We've been learning different skills and sharing what we know. Luna is amazing at fishing. She's learned to catch fish with her bare hands, and Sunny has the most beautiful garden you've ever seen." Sunny blushed and smiled. "River is being too kind. But I do love growing things. I've learned that certain plants grow especially well together, and I've been experimenting with different combinations." Maya felt a warm sense of belonging as she listened to her new friends. It was wonderful to meet other people who loved forest life as much as she did. They spent the morning sharing stories, comparing the different tools and shelters they had built, and learning from each other's experiences. Luna showed them how to weave strong rope from plant fibers, a skill that Maya immediately wanted to learn. River demonstrated a clever way to build a fish trap that would catch dinner while they were busy with other tasks. Sunny shared seeds from her garden and explained which plants were best for cooking, which ones could be used to make natural dyes, and which ones had healing properties. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the group decided to spend the day exploring together. Sam brought his collection of colourful keys, and they all agreed it would be fun to investigate the mysterious caves he had discovered. They gathered supplies for their adventure: water, food, rope, and simple tools. Maya brought her fishing rod, thinking they might stop by a good fishing spot along the way. Sam packed his scavenging supplies in case they found interesting items to collect. Luna brought her bow, which she had learned to make for hunting small game. River carried a sturdy walking stick he had carved himself, and Sunny brought a basket for any useful plants they might discover. The walk deeper into the forest was pleasant and peaceful. The trees grew taller and older as they travelled, creating a canopy so thick that the sunlight filtered down in magical green-tinted beams. They passed beautiful clearings filled with wildflowers, babbling brooks that sparkled in the dappled light, and ancient trees so wide that all 5 friends could hold hands and still not reach all the way around the trunk. Along the way, they discovered all sorts of interesting things. Sunny found several new types of berries and carefully tasted tiny amounts to test if they were safe to eat. River spotted a family of deer drinking from a stream and motioned for everyone to watch quietly as the graceful animals went about their business. Luna found a fallen tree that was perfect for practicing her balance and coordination. Maya was amazed by how much more she noticed when exploring with friends. They pointed out things to each other that they might have missed alone. Unusual bird calls, interesting rock formations, trees that had grown in particularly beautiful or curious ways. After walking for about 2 hours, they reached the area where Sam had found the mysterious keys. The forest here felt different somehow, older and more mysterious, but still peaceful and welcoming. Ancient trees stretched high overhead, and the air seemed to shimmer with a gentle, magical quality. "The caves are just up ahead," Sam said, pointing to a rocky hillside that rose up between the trees. As they got closer, Maya could see several cave entrances built into the stone. Each cave had a heavy wooden door with a large, decorative lock that matched one of Sam's keys perfectly. The first cave they approached had a red door with copper-colored metal decorations. The lock was shaped like a flower, with intricate petals carved into the metal. Sam inserted the red key, and it turned with a satisfying click. "Should we go in?" Luna asked, peering curiously at the now open door. "Let's be careful and stick together," River suggested wisely. "We don't know what might be inside." Maya felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness as they stepped through the doorway. The cave was larger than she had expected, with smooth stone walls and a high ceiling. Sunlight filtered in through cracks in the rock above, creating a natural skylight that illuminated the space with a warm, golden glow. But what captured their attention immediately was a small figure huddled in the corner of the cave. It was a young child, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a dinosaur-themed shirt and a baseball cap. The child looked tired and scared, but unharmed. "Hello there," Maya said gently, approaching slowly so she wouldn't frighten the child further. "Are you okay? What's your name?" The child looked up with wide, worried eyes. "I'm Danny," he said in a small voice. "I got lost in the forest and couldn't find my way home. I've been hiding in here because it felt safe, but I was starting to get really scared." Sunny immediately went to sit beside Danny, offering him some berries from her basket. "Don't worry," she said kindly. "We're here to help. We live in the forest too, and we know the way back to the safe areas." Luna and River explored the rest of the cave, while Maya and the others comforted Danny. The cave was clearly natural, with beautiful rock formations and small pools of clear water. But there were also signs that someone had been taking care of it. Soft moss had been arranged to make a comfortable sleeping area, and there were even some simple drawings on the walls that looked like they had been made with charcoal. "It looks like someone set this place up as a shelter," River observed. "Maybe there are other lost children who have been staying in these caves." Danny nodded eagerly. "There are. I've seen them sometimes, but we were all too scared to leave our hiding places. There's a girl in the blue cave and 2 more kids in the other caves. We've been trying to take care of each other, but we really want to go home." Maya felt her heart fill with determination. This was clearly the important mission that some of the older forest campers had been talking about, finding and helping the lost children return to safety. She looked at her friends and saw the same resolve in their eyes. "We're going to help all of you," she promised Danny. "Let's gather everyone together and get you back to the main camp where it's safe and warm." They spent the next few hours carefully visiting each of the other caves. In the blue cave, they found a girl named Katie who wore a pretty hat decorated with sea creatures. She had been surviving by collecting rainwater and eating the emergency supplies that had been left in the cave. The yellow cave housed a boy named Alex who loved marine life and had been making friends with some small creatures that lived in the cave's underground pools. He was clever and resourceful, having figured out how to make simple tools from rocks and sticks. The final cave, which opened with the grey key, was home to a girl named Emma who wore a koala-themed backpack. She was the oldest of the 4 children and had been working hard to help coordinate their survival efforts, sharing food and checking on the others when she could. All 4 children were tired and homesick, but they were also remarkably brave and resilient. They had been helping each other survive in the forest for several weeks, showing the same kind of cooperation and kindness that Maya admired in her new friends. "The thing that scared us the most," Emma explained as they gathered everyone together, "was the big creature we sometimes saw at night. It looks like a deer, but much larger, and it walks on its back legs like a person. We stayed hidden in the caves whenever we heard it moving around outside." Maya exchanged glances with her friends. They had all heard stories about the mysterious deer from other forest campers. Most people said it was actually a gentle creature that was just misunderstood, but it did look quite frightening if you encountered it unexpectedly. "The deer isn't dangerous as long as you stay near bright fires," Sam explained to the children. "It's actually afraid of light. That's why it's so important to keep good campfires burning in our camps." See, as the sun began to set, the group realized they needed to get everyone back to the main camping area quickly. The forest could be confusing to navigate at night, especially for the children who were still learning their way around. Luna took charge of organizing their journey home. She had the best sense of direction among the group and had memorized many landmarks during their travels. River and Sam helped carry the younger children when they got tired, while Maya and Sunny kept everyone's spirits up with songs and stories. The walk back felt like a joyful parade through the forest. The children were amazed by all the beautiful things Maya and her friends pointed out along the way. Glowing mushrooms that provided natural light in the gathering dusk, night-blooming flowers that opened as darkness fell, and the cheerful sounds of evening birds settling into their roosts. When they finally reached the main camping area, they were greeted with cheers and celebration from the other forest dwellers. Many people had been quietly searching for the missing children, and everyone was delighted to see them safe and sound. The main camp was a wonderful sight in the gathering darkness. Dozens of campfires twinkled like stars scattered throughout the forest, each one surrounded by cozy shelters and happy campers. The air was filled with the delicious smells of cooking food and the warm sounds of conversation and laughter. The children were immediately welcomed into the community. Other campers offered them warm food, comfortable places to sleep, and gentle help with getting cleaned up and feeling more secure. Maya was touched by how quickly everyone worked together to make sure the rescued children felt safe and cared for. Danny found a spot near Maya's camp, setting up a small tent with help from Sam. Katie joined Luna by her fishing camp near the stream. Alex was fascinated by River's collection of water plants and asked if he could learn about aquatic gardening. Emma, being the oldest, was invited to join Sunny in learning advanced camping skills. As the night deepened, Maya sat by her campfire with her new friends, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and joy. They had accomplished something really important together, and they had formed friendships that she knew would last for a long time. "I can't believe this is only my 28th night in the forest," she said wonderingly. "It feels like I've learned so much and experienced so many adventures already." The best part is that we still have so many more nights ahead of us," Luna replied with a smile. "There's always something new to discover and learn." River nodded enthusiastically. "And now we have 4 new friends to share our adventures with. I think the children will love learning all the forest skills we've picked up." Over the following days, Maya and her friends worked together to help the rescued children settle into forest life. It was wonderful to see how quickly they adapted and began to develop their own interests and skills. Danny turned out to have a natural talent for fire building and quickly learned to create perfect campfires that burned steadily all night long. He also showed an interest in learning about the different types of wood and how they could be used for various purposes. Katie discovered that she had excellent eyesight and was particularly good at spotting fish in the stream. Luna began teaching her advanced fishing techniques, and Katie soon became skilled at catching dinner for her new forest family. Alex was fascinated by all forms of water life and began working with River to create beautiful aquatic gardens in small ponds and stream pools. He had a gentle way with creatures and seemed to understand their needs instinctively. Emma proved to be a natural leader and organizer. She worked with Sunny to learn about plant cultivation and camp management, and she quickly became someone that other campers looked to for advice and coordination. As the days passed, Maya found herself learning new skills as well. Inspired by her friends' diverse talents, she decided to focus on developing her abilities as a camper. She learned to build increasingly sophisticated shelters, discovered new techniques for food storage and preparation, and became expert at maintaining fires that provided both warmth and protection. One of her favorite new skills was learning to craft beautiful and functional items from forest materials. She made wind chimes from pieces of stone and wood that created lovely music when the evening breezes moved through them. She learned to weave decorative baskets that were both beautiful and useful for storing food and supplies. Maya also began experimenting with natural dyes made from berries and flowers, creating colourful fabrics and decorations for her camp. She discovered that certain plants could be used to make gentle soaps and shampoos, keeping everyone clean and fresh-smelling even while living outdoors. The friendship between Maya and her growing group of forest companions deepened each day. They developed routines and traditions that made their shared life feel like a wonderful, extended camping adventure. Every morning, they would meet by the stream for breakfast and planning. They would share any dreams they had during the night, discuss what they wanted to accomplish during the day, and make sure everyone felt included in their activities. Afternoons were often spent on individual projects: Luna fishing, River tending his gardens, Sunny working with plants, Sam exploring and collecting, Maya crafting and building. But they always made time to help each other and learn from one another's expertise. Evenings were Maya's favourite time. As the sun set and the campfires were lit, the entire forest community would come together for shared meals, storytelling and music. Someone would always have a guitar or flute, and they would sing songs that echoed gently through the trees. The children especially loved story time. Maya and her friends would take turns telling tales of their forest adventures, sharing what they had learned, and making up imaginative stories about the creatures and spirits that lived in the woods. One evening, Emma asked a question that had been bothering all the children. "Do you think we'll ever see that big deer creature again? The one that scared us when we were lost?" Maya thought carefully before answering. She had heard more stories about the deer from other experienced campers, and she was beginning to understand that it wasn't the frightening monster the children had imagined. "I think we probably will see the deer again," she said gently. "But I don't think it meant to scare you. From what I've learned, the deer is actually trying to protect the forest and everyone who lives here. It just looks scary because it's so big and different from what we're used to." Sam nodded in agreement. "The older campers say the deer has been watching over the forest for a very long time. It's like a guardian that makes sure the forest stays healthy and safe." Luna added her own understanding. "I think the deer might have been trying to help you when you were lost. Maybe it guided you to those caves because they were safe places to wait until someone could find you." River had been listening thoughtfully. "You know, I've noticed that the deer only comes around at night, and it always keeps its distance from our fires. I think it's just very shy and doesn't want to frighten anyone." Sunny, who was always optimistic, suggested a beautiful possibility. "Maybe someday, when we've been in the forest long enough and learned to understand it better, the deer will trust us enough to let us see it up close. Maybe it's just waiting for us to prove that we're good friends to the forest." The children found these explanations much more comforting than their original fears. They began to think of the deer as a mysterious but benevolent presence that was watching over them rather than threatening them. As the nights passed, Maya's group continued to grow in skill and confidence. They began taking on more ambitious projects and exploring areas of the forest they hadn't visited before. One day, Luna discovered a beautiful fishing spot in a quiet part of the forest where a stream widened into a crystal-clear pool. The water was so clear that they could see fish swimming among colourful stones and aquatic plants on the bottom. She brought everyone to see her discovery, and they decided to establish a secondary camp there for fishing expeditions. River found an area where wild vegetables and herbs grew in abundance. He began cultivating the natural gardens there, learning which plants grew well together and how to encourage them to produce more food for the community. Sam's explorations led him to several interesting ruins scattered throughout the forest. Old stone foundations that suggested people had lived in the woods long ago. He found all sorts of useful items in these places, and his discoveries helped everyone improve their tools and equipment. Sunny discovered a meadow where the soil was particularly rich and fertile. She began experimenting with growing crops there, planting seeds from fruits and vegetables, and learning through trial and error how to become a successful forest farmer. Maya became fascinated with improving the main camp area. She worked on building better shelters, creating comfortable gathering spaces, and developing systems for storing food and supplies efficiently. Her innovations made life more comfortable for everyone in the community. The 4 rescued children threw themselves enthusiastically into learning these various skills. Danny became Maya's eager apprentice in camp building and fire management. Katie worked closely with Luna to master fishing and water-related activities. Alex partnered with River in developing and maintaining aquatic gardens. Emma collaborated with Sunny on farming and community organization. As their 35th night in the forest approached, Maya realized that what had started as a personal survival adventure had become something much richer and more meaningful. She was part of a close-knit community of friends who supported each other, learned together, and worked cooperatively to create a happy life in the beautiful forest. The forest itself seemed to respond to their positive energy. The weather was usually pleasant, with just enough rain to keep everything green and growing, and plenty of sunny days for outdoor activities. The streams ran clear and full of fish. Wild fruits and nuts were abundant. Even the wildlife seemed friendlier and less fearful of the human campers. One evening, as Maya was tending her fire and writing in her bark journal, she heard soft footsteps approaching through the forest. She looked up to see a figure emerging from the trees. It was an older woman with grey hair braided with flowers and kind, wise eyes. "Good evening, dear," the woman said with a warm smile. "My name is Sage, and I've been living in these woods for many years. I've been watching your group with great interest and admiration." Maya invited Sage to sit by her fire and share some tea made from herbs she had learned to gather. As they talked, she learned that Sage was one of the most experienced forest dwellers, someone who had mastered many different skills and had deep knowledge about the woods and its creatures. "I've been particularly impressed by how you and your friends rescued those lost children," Sage said approvingly. "That showed real wisdom and compassion. The forest spirits have taken notice of your kindness." Maya felt a warm glow of pride at the praise, but she was also curious about what Sage meant by forest spirits. "Are there really spirits in the forest?" she asked. Sage's eyes twinkled mysteriously. "The forest is full of life and energy that most people never notice. There are the obvious creatures, the birds and animals you see every day. But there are also more subtle presences, the spirits of very old trees, the guardian energies of special places. And yes, creatures like the deer that serve as protectors and guides." As if summoned by their conversation, a large shadow moved at the edge of the firelight. Maya caught her breath as she saw the deer for the first time. It was indeed magnificent and intimidating, much larger than an ordinary deer, standing upright on its hind legs, with intelligent eyes that seemed to look directly into her soul. But rather than feeling frightened, Maya felt a sense of awe and respect. The deer's presence was powerful but not threatening. It seemed to be studying her and Sage with gentle curiosity. Sage stood slowly and bowed respectfully to the creature. "Good evening, old friend," she said softly. "We were just talking about the important work these young people have been doing." The deer tilted its massive head slightly, as if acknowledging Sage's words. Then it looked directly at Maya with what seemed like approval, before turning and disappearing silently back into the forest. Maya sat in stunned silence for several moments after the deer vanished. "It was beautiful," she whispered finally. "I can't believe I was ever afraid of it." Sage smiled knowingly. Fear usually comes from not understanding. The deer has been watching over this forest for longer than anyone knows. It protects the balance of nature and guides lost souls to safety. Those children you rescued were under its protection the whole time they were missing. Over the following days, Maya shared her encounter with the deer with her friends and the rescued children. Instead of being frightened by the story, everyone felt honored that the great creature had chosen to reveal itself to their group. The knowledge that they were under the deer's protection gave them confidence to explore even further into the forest and take on more challenging projects. They began to see themselves not just as campers and survivors, but as participants in the greater life of the forest. Danny became particularly interested in learning about the deer and other forest guardians. He began keeping a special journal where he recorded any signs or traces of the creature's presence. He learned to recognize its distinctive hoof prints and the subtle changes in the forest that indicated it had passed through an area. Katie discovered that certain fish seemed to appear more frequently in areas where the deer had been recently. She began mapping these patterns and found that following the deer's path often led to the best fishing spots. Alex noticed that water plants and animals seemed healthier and more abundant in places the deer visited regularly. He began incorporating this knowledge into his garden planning, choosing locations that would benefit from the creature's protective influence. Emma, with her natural leadership abilities, began organizing the forest community's efforts to show respect and gratitude for the deer's protection. She suggested that they leave small offerings of gratitude, beautiful flowers, perfect fruits, or carefully crafted tokens, at places where they had seen signs of the deer's presence. As their 40th night in the forest arrived, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed since those early days when she could barely build a proper fire. She had become skilled in so many areas: crafting, building, food preparation, plant identification, weather prediction, and much more. More importantly, she had found a wonderful community of friends who shared her love for forest life. Together, they had created something special, a peaceful, cooperative society that lived in harmony with the natural world. The rescue of the 4 children had been a turning point for all of them. It had shown them that they could work together to solve problems and help others. It had also deepened their connection to the forest and its mysterious guardian spirits. Maya's group had grown even larger as other campers were drawn to their positive energy and cooperative approach to forest living. They now had nearly 20 people in their extended community, ranging from young children to experienced elders like Sage. Everyone contributed their unique skills and talents to the group's well-being. Some people were natural hunters who provided meat and taught others about animal behavior. Others were skilled crafters who made beautiful and functional items for daily use. Still others were talented musicians and storytellers who kept everyone entertained during the long forest evenings. Maya had become something of a leader in the community, not because she tried to take charge, but because others naturally looked to her for guidance and inspiration. Her combination of practical skills, kind heart, and calm wisdom made her someone that people trusted and respected. But Maya never forgot that leadership in their forest community was about serving others, not about having power over them. She always made sure that decisions were made together, that everyone's voice was heard, and that no one felt left out or unimportant. As the seasons began to change and autumn approached, the forest became even more beautiful. The leaves started turning brilliant colors: gold, orange, red, and deep purple. The air became crisp and fresh, perfect for long hikes and outdoor activities. Maya's group began preparing for the challenges of winter camping. They gathered extra firewood, preserved food for the colder months, and improved their shelters to provide better protection from wind and weather. These preparations became community-wide projects that brought everyone together. Work parties would form spontaneously to tackle big jobs like building storage sheds or weaving warm blankets. Children and adults worked side by side, everyone contributing according to their abilities. The rescued children had become fully integrated into forest life and were now some of the most enthusiastic participants in these community projects. Danny had become expert at selecting and preparing the best firewood. Katie organised fishing expeditions to catch and preserve fish for winter meals. Alex helped design water collection systems that would work even when streams were partially frozen. Emma coordinated food storage and distribution to make sure everyone would have enough to eat during the cold season. One particularly beautiful autumn day, as Maya was working on improving her shelter's roof, she heard excited voices coming from the direction of the main camp. She hurried over to see what was happening and found a crowd gathered around Sage, who was holding what looked like an old hand-drawn map. "What's all the excitement about?" Maya asked Sam, who was standing at the edge of the group. "Sage found an old map hidden in one of the ruins," Sam explained eagerly. "It shows parts of the forest that none of us have explored yet. Look at this. There are symbols marked on it that might indicate special places or resources we haven't discovered." Maya squeezed forward to get a better look at the map. It was drawn on what looked like animal hide and was decorated with beautiful, intricate symbols. The map showed familiar landmarks like the main camp and the stream, but it also indicated areas that none of them had visited. Most intriguingly, the map marked several locations with special symbols: a spiral shape that might indicate caves or underground areas, a star shape that could mean important gathering places, and a tree symbol that appeared to mark particularly significant forest locations. "I think this map was made by people who lived in the forest long ago," Sage explained to the fascinated crowd. "See how detailed and accurate it is for the areas we know. This could help us discover places that have been forgotten for generations." Luna studied the map carefully. "This symbol here near the northern stream, I think I've seen that area before. There were some unusual stone formations that didn't look completely natural." River pointed to another section of the map. "And this tree symbol is marked right about where I found that grove of fruit trees that seemed too perfectly arranged to be wild." The group decided to organize a major exploration expedition to investigate the map's mysteries. This would be their most ambitious adventure yet, requiring careful planning and preparation. Maya found herself naturally taking charge of organizing the expedition. She worked with Sage to study the map and plan their route. She coordinated with Luna and River to make sure they had adequate supplies for several days of travel. She arranged for some community members to stay behind and maintain the main camp while others explored. The rescued children were eager to participate in the expedition, and Maya felt they were now experienced enough to handle the challenges of extended forest exploration. Their enthusiasm and energy would be valuable additions to the group. On the morning of departure, Maya woke before dawn to make final preparations. As she banked her fire and packed her supplies, she felt a familiar sense of excitement mixed with nervous anticipation. This was the kind of adventure she had been dreaming about since her earliest days in the forest. The expedition group consisted of 12 people: Maya, Sam, Luna, River, Sunny, the 4 rescued children, Sage, and 2 other experienced campers named Brooke and Forrest. Everyone carried packs with food, water, tools, and camping gear for 3 days of travel. As they set out into the misty morning forest, Maya felt a sense of completion and new beginning at the same time. They had accomplished so much already: building a thriving community, rescuing lost children, learning countless skills, and forming deep friendships. Now they were embarking on a quest that might reveal even greater mysteries and treasures. The first day of travel took them through familiar territory, but by afternoon they were entering parts of the forest that none of them had visited before. The trees here were older and larger, creating a cathedral-like atmosphere with their towering trunks and interwoven canopy. The forest floor was carpeted with thick moss that muffled their footsteps, making their passage almost silent. Streams of golden sunlight filtered down through the leaves, creating an ethereal, magical atmosphere that made everyone speak in hushed, reverent tones. As they walked, they discovered many beautiful and interesting things. ancient trees with hollow trunks large enough to serve as shelters, clear pools fed by underground springs, rock formations that looked like they had been carved by artists rather than shaped by natural forces. By evening, they had reached the first symbol marked on the map, the spiral shape that they had guessed might indicate caves. What they found exceeded their expectations. Hidden behind a screen of hanging vines was the entrance to a cave system unlike anything they had ever seen. The caves were clearly natural, but they had been enhanced and decorated by human hands long ago. The walls were covered with beautiful paintings depicting forest animals, people gathering plants and hunting, and ceremonial scenes that suggested these caves had been sacred to their ancient creators. Deeper in the cave system, they discovered underground chambers with crystal formations that sparkled like stars in the light of their torches. Some chambers contained clear pools of water that reflected their lights like mirrors. Others had natural shelves carved into the walls where ancient pottery and tools had been carefully placed. This must have been a special ceremonial site, Sage said wonderingly as they explored the painted chambers. The artwork shows people who lived in harmony with the forest, just like we're trying to do. Emma was particularly fascinated by the paintings of children in the artwork. Look, she pointed out. These pictures show kids participating in all the forest activities alongside the adults. They must have believed that children were important members of their community. Danny found a series of paintings that seemed to tell a story about firekeeping and the importance of maintaining sacred flames. The artwork showed people gathering around fires, sharing food and stories, and passing knowledge from older to younger generations. Katie discovered paintings of fishing and water activities that gave her new ideas about techniques she wanted to try. The ancient artists had depicted ways of catching fish and managing water resources that were more sophisticated than anything their modern group had attempted. Alex was amazed by detailed paintings of gardens and plant cultivation. The artwork showed that the ancient forest dwellers had been skilled farmers who grew diverse crops and understood the relationships between different plants. The expedition group spent their first night camping in one of the larger cave chambers. The space felt safe and sacred, and they built a respectful fire on what appeared to be an ancient fire ring carved into the stone floor. As they sat around their fire, sharing food and talking about their discoveries, Maya felt a deep sense of connection to the people who had lived in this place generations ago. She could imagine them sitting in this same chamber, telling stories and sharing wisdom just as her group was doing now. I wonder what happened to the people who made these paintings, River mused as he studied the artwork by firelight. Maybe they're still here, Sunny suggested thoughtfully. Maybe they became part of the forest itself, like the spirits Sage talks about. Sage nodded approvingly at this idea. Indigenous wisdom traditions often speak of ancestors who continue to guide and protect their descendants even after death. Perhaps the creators of these caves are still watching over the forest in spirit form. The second day of their expedition took them to the star symbol on the map, which turned out to mark a circular clearing surrounded by standing stones. The stones were arranged in a perfect circle, and each one was carved with symbols similar to those they had seen in the painted caves. In the center of the circle was a natural spring that bubbled up from underground and flowed out through small channels, carved in the stone to water the surrounding forest. The whole area had an atmosphere of peace and power that made everyone feel they were in a very special place. Luna immediately recognized that this was an ideal location for certain types of fishing and water activities. The spring water was perfectly clear and sweet-tasting, and she could see small fish swimming in the pools formed by the carved channels. River was fascinated by the water management system created by the carved stone channels. The ancient builders had designed a way to distribute the spring water efficiently throughout the surrounding area, creating a zone of particularly lush plant growth. Sam discovered that the standing stones contained small hidden compartments, some of which still held ancient tools and ceremonial objects. The items were perfectly preserved and showed incredible craftsmanship in their design and decoration. Maya felt drawn to the center of the stone circle, where she sat quietly and tried to absorb the peaceful energy of the place. She found herself imagining ceremonies and gatherings that might have taken place here, with people coming from throughout the forest to participate in important community events. The expedition group decided to hold their own small ceremony at the stone circle, expressing gratitude for the discoveries they had made and asking for continued guidance in their forest life. Each person contributed something to the ceremony: a song, a poem, a small offering, or simply quiet reflection. As they performed their impromptu ritual, a gentle breeze began to blow through the clearing, rustling the leaves of the surrounding trees in what sounded almost like whispered voices. Several members of the group reported feeling a sense of welcome and approval from unseen presences. The final symbol on their map, the tree marking, led them to a grove of ancient trees, unlike any they had ever seen. These trees were enormous, with trunks so wide that 20 people holding hands couldn't reach around them. They were also incredibly tall, rising so high that their tops were lost in the misty air above the forest canopy. What made these trees truly special, however, was that they had been modified by human hands to serve as living buildings. Staircases had been carved into the bark, leading up to platforms and rooms hollowed out inside the massive trunks. Bridges made of woven branches connected the trees to each other, creating a village in the treetops. "This is incredible," Maya breathed as she looked up at the tree city above them. The ancient forest people didn't just live with the trees, they lived inside them. Climbing the carved staircases was like entering a magical realm. The rooms inside the trees were spacious and comfortable, with windows carved through the bark to provide light and ventilation. The walls were smooth and curved, following the natural shape of the tree's interior. Some rooms clearly had been used for sleeping, with platforms carved into the walls to hold bedding. Others appeared to have been workshops where tools and crafts were made. Still others seemed designed for storage, with natural shelves and compartments built into the tree's structure. The bridges between trees were masterpieces of engineering and artistry. They were strong enough to support multiple people, but flexible enough to move gently with the wind. Walking across them gave the sensation of floating through the forest canopy like a bird. From the highest platforms, the expedition group could see for miles in every direction. The forest spread out below them like a green ocean, with rivers and clearings visible as bright threads and patches in the endless expanse of trees. Emma was particularly excited by the storage system she found in the tree city. "Look at how efficiently they organized everything," she said admiringly. Each family must have had specific trees for different purposes: sleeping, cooking, working, storing food. Danny was fascinated by the fire management systems the tree dwellers had developed. They had created safe ways to have fires inside the trees, with carefully designed ventilation and fireproof chambers that protected the living wood from damage. Katie discovered that several trees had been modified to collect and channel rainwater, creating a sophisticated system for ensuring adequate water supplies, even during dry periods. Alex found evidence that the tree dwellers had practiced a form of aerial gardening, growing food plants on the platforms and bridges of their treetop city. The expedition group spent their second night camping on one of the large platforms in the tree city. As darkness fell, they were surrounded by the gentle sounds of night birds and small animals that lived in the forest canopy. The experience of sleeping so high above the ground gave them a completely different perspective on forest life. Maya lay on her back, looking up at the stars through gaps in the leaves above. She felt like she was floating in space, suspended between the earth and sky. The sensation was both peaceful and exhilarating, giving her a sense of freedom and possibility that was unlike anything she had ever experienced. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya heard soft footsteps moving across the bridges between trees. But instead of feeling alarmed, she felt comforted, as if the ancient spirits of the Tree City were walking their familiar paths and keeping watch over the sleeping visitors. In the morning, the expedition group explored more of the Tree City and made careful notes and sketches of everything they found. They wanted to remember all the details so they could share their discoveries with the rest of their forest community. They also gathered samples of the special tools and techniques they had observed, planning to experiment with adapting some of the ancient methods for use in their own camps. The tree dwellers had developed solutions to problems that the modern forest community was just beginning to encounter. As they prepared to return to their main camp, Maya felt a mixture of sadness at leaving the magical Tree City and excitement about sharing their discoveries with their friends. The expedition had shown them that the forest held many more secrets and wonders than they had ever imagined. The journey home took them through different territory than their outward route, allowing them to discover even more interesting features of the forest. They found berry patches that would provide food for future expeditions, streams that would serve as reliable water sources, and scenic areas that would make beautiful camping spots. By the time they arrived back at their main camp, word of their return had spread throughout the forest community. People gathered around eagerly to hear about their adventures and see the sketches and samples they had brought back. Maya and her companions spent several evenings sharing stories of their expedition. Each person contributed different details and perspectives, creating a rich and complete picture of their discoveries for everyone to enjoy. The discoveries had a profound impact on the entire forest community. People began to see their own camping activities as part of a much longer tradition of humans living in harmony with the forest. They felt connected to the ancient peoples who had created the caves, stone circles, and tree cities. Inspired by the expedition's discoveries, different groups within the community began planning their own exploration projects. Some wanted to search for more ancient sites that might be hidden in unexplored areas of the forest. Others wanted to experiment with adapting the techniques and technologies they had learned about. Maya found herself busier than ever as people sought her advice about planning expeditions and implementing new ideas. But she was happy to share her knowledge and help others pursue their own forest adventures. The rescued children had grown tremendously during the expedition, developing confidence and skills that served them well in all their forest activities. They had proven themselves to be valuable team members who could handle challenges and contribute meaningfully to group efforts. Danny had become so skilled at fire management that other campers sought his advice about improving their own campfire techniques. He had also developed a talent for reading weather patterns and could predict changes in conditions with remarkable accuracy. Katie had evolved into an expert fisher whose techniques were studied and copied by others throughout the community. She had also become skilled at water navigation and could lead groups safely along streams and rivers. Alex had become the community's specialist in aquatic ecosystems, able to create and maintain beautiful water gardens that provided both food and aesthetic enjoyment. His understanding of plant and animal relationships had become encyclopedic. Emma had developed into a natural coordinator and organizer whose leadership skills were invaluable for planning complex community projects. She had also become expert at food preservation and storage techniques. As autumn deepened into winter, Maya's forest community continued to thrive and grow. The discoveries from their expedition had provided new knowledge and inspiration that carried them through the challenges of cold weather camping. They had adapted some of the ancient techniques for winter survival, creating more efficient heating systems, better food preservation methods, and improved shelter designs. The winter that had once seemed daunting now felt manageable and even enjoyable. Maya spent the long winter evenings working on crafts and writing detailed accounts of their adventures in her bark journals. She had begun creating a comprehensive guide to forest living that incorporated everything they had learned from their own experiences and from studying the ancient sites. Her guide included detailed instructions for building shelters, managing fires, finding and preparing food, crafting tools and useful items, and developing the various specialized skills that made forest life comfortable and sustainable. But Maya's guide was more than just a practical manual. It also included stories, songs, and wisdom about living in harmony with nature and building cooperative communities. She wanted future forest dwellers to understand not just the techniques of survival, but the deeper principles that made forest life fulfilling and meaningful. As winter gradually gave way to spring, Maya realized that she had been living in the forest for over 60 nights. What had begun as a personal survival challenge had become a complete way of life that she could hardly imagine giving up. The forest community had grown to include nearly 40 people of all ages, from young children to elderly wisdom keepers like Sage. They had created a society that was peaceful, cooperative, and sustainable, living in harmony with the natural world around them. Maya's own skills had developed far beyond what she had ever thought possible. She was now recognized as one of the community's most knowledgeable and capable members, someone that others looked to for guidance and leadership. But perhaps more importantly, she had learned that the greatest rewards of forest life came not from individual achievements, but from the relationships and community that made all their other accomplishments possible. As spring brought new growth and renewed energy to the forest, Maya's community began planning even more ambitious projects. They wanted to establish permanent settlements at some of the ancient sites they had discovered, creating a network of camps connected by well-maintained trails. They also planned to start teaching forest skills to visitors from outside their community, sharing their knowledge with people who wanted to learn about sustainable living and harmony with nature. Maya found herself at the center of these planning efforts, helping to coordinate the various projects and make sure that all the community's needs were considered. It was challenging work, but she loved the opportunity to help create something truly special and meaningful. One warm spring evening, as Maya sat by her campfire writing in her journal, she heard familiar footsteps approaching through the forest. She looked up to see the majestic figure of the deer emerging from the shadows at the edge of her camp. But this time, the great creature didn't stop at the edge of the firelight. Instead, it walked slowly and deliberately into the circle of warmth and light, its intelligent eyes fixed on Maya with what looked unmistakably like approval and respect. Maya stood slowly and bowed respectfully to the deer, just as she had seen Sage do during their first encounter. "Thank you," she said softly, "for watching over us and protecting the forest we all love." The deer tilted its magnificent head in acknowledgement, then turned its gaze toward the main camp, where the lights of many fires twinkled through the trees. It seemed to be observing the thriving community that had grown and flourished under its protection. After several long moments, the deer looked back at Maya one final time, and she could have sworn she saw something like pride and satisfaction in its ancient eyes. Then it turned and disappeared silently back into the forest, leaving Maya with a profound sense of completion and blessing. As Maya settled back down by her fire, she realized that the deer's visit marked an important milestone in her forest journey. She had progressed from a frightened newcomer who could barely build a fire to a confident community leader who had earned the respect of the forest's ancient guardian. The next morning brought exciting news from Sam, who had been exploring some of the areas marked on their ancient map that they hadn't yet had time to investigate. He had discovered what appeared to be the entrance to a vast underground cave system that extended far beneath the forest floor. "It's incredible," Sam reported to the gathered community. "The entrance is hidden behind a waterfall, and the caves go deeper than I could explore in one day. I saw chambers that looked like they might be natural amphitheaters, and passages that seemed to connect to underground rivers." Maya felt her adventurous spirit stirring again at Sam's description. A major cave exploration would be the perfect next challenge for their experienced and confident community. But as she began to think about organizing another expedition, Maya realized something important. The forest had given them so many gifts and opportunities for discovery. Perhaps it was time for them to give something back. "Before we start planning new explorations," Maya suggested to the group, "maybe we should focus on completing some of our projects to improve and protect the forest. We could work on maintaining the ancient sites we've discovered, creating better trails between important locations and developing sustainable practices that will help the forest thrive for generations to come. The community embraced Maya's suggestion enthusiastically. They spent the following weeks working on projects that would benefit both the forest and future visitors. They carefully restored damaged areas at the ancient cave paintings, ensuring that these precious historical records would be preserved. They created gentle trails that allowed people to visit the stone circle and tree city without damaging the delicate ecosystems around these sites. Maya led a project to establish gardens using the ancient techniques they had learned, creating sustainable food sources that actually improved the forest rather than depleting it. These gardens became living laboratories where they could continue learning about the relationships between different plants and animals. They also began a project to document and preserve the traditional knowledge they had gathered from studying the ancient sites and learning from elders like Sage. Maya's comprehensive guide to forest living became the foundation for a library of knowledge that would help future generations continue their work. As summer approached, bringing with it the warmth and abundance that made forest life especially pleasant, Maya reflected on how completely her life had changed since those early days of simple survival. She had found not just a way to live in the forest, but a calling to help others discover the same harmony and fulfillment that forest life could provide. She had learned that true success came not from individual achievement, but from building communities that supported everyone's growth and well-being. The rescued children had become accomplished forest dwellers in their own right, each developing unique specialties while contributing to the community's overall success. They had also become teachers themselves, sharing their knowledge with newer arrivals and helping them adjust to forest life. Danny had become the community's fire master, responsible for maintaining the sacred flames that provided safety and warmth throughout their network of camps. His understanding of fire behavior and management was so advanced that he could predict and prevent problems before they occurred. Katie had developed into a master fisher and water navigator, whose skills allowed the community to explore previously inaccessible areas along rivers and lakes. She had also become expert at reading water conditions and weather patterns. Alex had created a system of aquatic gardens that provided both food and beautiful natural spaces throughout the forest community. His work had attracted rare and colourful fish and water birds that had never been seen in the area before. Emma had become the community's chief organizer and coordinator, managing the complex logistics of supporting a large and diverse group of forest dwellers. Her diplomatic skills had helped resolve conflicts, and her planning abilities had made ambitious projects possible. As Maya's 70th night in the forest approached, she began to think about the significance of time in forest life. In the outside world, people often felt rushed and pressured by artificial schedules and deadlines. But forest time moved according to natural rhythms, the cycles of day and night, the changing seasons, the gradual growth and development of plants and animals. Living according to forest time had taught Maya patience, acceptance, and a deeper appreciation for the natural processes that governed all life. She had learned to work with natural forces rather than against them, to adapt her plans to changing conditions rather than trying to force her will upon the environment. This understanding had made her not just a better forest dweller, but a better person overall. She had developed qualities of wisdom, compassion, and resilience that served her well in all her relationships and activities. The forest community had also learned to operate according to natural time. They made decisions through patient discussion and consensus building rather than hurried voting. They planned projects to unfold gradually over months or seasons rather than trying to accomplish everything immediately. This approach had resulted in more thoughtful and sustainable outcomes than would have been possible with hasty decision-making. Their projects were carefully designed, thoroughly tested, and built to last for generations, rather than being quick fixes that would need constant maintenance. As autumn returned for Maya's second year in the forest, she was amazed to see how much the community had grown and developed. They now had nearly 60 members living in a network of camps connected by well-maintained trails. Each camp had its own specialty and character, while remaining connected to the larger community through shared values and regular communication. Some camps focused on particular skills like fishing, farming, or crafting. Others were organized around specific interests like music, storytelling, or exploration. Maya's original camp had become the community's unofficial headquarters, partly because of its central location, but mainly because of her role as a respected leader and coordinator. People came to her camp for advice, planning meetings, and to resolve problems that affected the entire community. But Maya had been careful to ensure that leadership remained distributed throughout the community, rather than concentrated in any single person or location. Each camp had its own leaders and decision-making processes, and major community decisions were made through gatherings that included representatives from all camps. This decentralized approach had created a community that was both unified and diverse, able to act together when necessary, while allowing for individual expression and local autonomy. As her 80th night approached, Maya began planning what would be her most ambitious project yet: a great gathering that would bring together forest dwellers from throughout the region to share knowledge, celebrate their achievements, and plan for the future. She envisioned a week-long festival that would include workshops on various forest skills, cultural events like music and storytelling, displays of crafts and innovations, and ceremonies to honor the forest and its guardian spirits. The planning for this gathering became a community-wide effort that engaged everyone's talents and enthusiasm. Different camps took responsibility for various aspects of the event: food preparation, entertainment, workshops, accommodations for visitors, and coordination with other forest communities. Maya found herself working more intensively than she had since the early days of her forest life, but the work was deeply satisfying because it brought together everything she had learned about leadership, organization, and community building. The gathering would also serve as an opportunity to share the discoveries they had made at the ancient sites and to coordinate preservation efforts with other groups who had found similar locations in their own areas. As word of the planned gathering spread throughout the forest network, Maya was amazed by the enthusiastic response. Forest communities from hundreds of miles away began making plans to send representatives to participate in the celebration. The event promised to be the largest gathering of forest dwellers in living memory, bringing together people who shared a common commitment to sustainable living and harmony with nature. As her 90th night in the forest arrived, Maya stood at the edge of her camp, looking out over the preparations for the great gathering. The main meadow had been transformed into a festival ground with stages for performances, areas for demonstrations and workshops, and spaces for camping and socializing. People had been arriving for several days, and the energy in the air was electric with excitement and anticipation. Maya had met forest dwellers whose skills and knowledge exceeded even her own, and she looked forward to learning from them during the coming week. But perhaps most importantly, she had seen the joy and pride in the faces of her own community members as they prepared to share their achievements with visitors from across the region. The children who had once been lost and frightened were now confident teachers and demonstrators. The friends who had started as beginners were now recognized experts in their chosen specialties. The Great Gathering officially began on Maya's 91st night in the forest with a ceremony of welcome that honored both the visiting participants and the forest itself. As representatives from dozens of communities shared their greetings and gratitude, Maya felt overwhelmed by the sense of connection and shared purpose that filled the gathering. The following days were filled with workshops, demonstrations, performances, and discussions that expanded everyone's knowledge and understanding. Maya participated eagerly in everything, learning new techniques and sharing her own expertise with equal enthusiasm. She was particularly moved by a ceremony on the 5th night of the gathering, when the assembled communities formally committed to working together to protect and preserve the ancient forest sites that had been discovered throughout the region. Representatives signed a charter that established principles for sustainable forest living and created a network for sharing knowledge and coordinating conservation efforts. Maya was honored to be chosen as one of the charter's primary signatories, representing not just her own community, but the entire movement toward harmonious forest living. As the gathering drew to a close on Maya's 97th night in the forest, she felt a profound sense of accomplishment and completion. The event had succeeded beyond her wildest hopes, creating connections and commitments that would benefit forest communities for generations to come. But she also felt a sense of anticipation as her 99th night approached. She had originally come to the forest for a 99-day survival challenge, never imagining that those 99 days would become the foundation for a completely new way of life. On her 98th night, Maya walked alone through the forest paths that had become as familiar to her as her own home. She visited the places where she had made her most important discoveries: the stream where she had first met Sam, the caves where they had rescued the lost children, the meadow where she had learned to garden, the ancient sites that had revealed the deep history of forest living. Each location held memories that filled her with gratitude and wonder. She had experienced more growth, learning, and fulfillment in these 98 days than in years of her previous life. But as she completed her walk and returned to her camp, Maya realized that the approaching 99th night didn't represent an ending, but rather a graduation into a new phase of forest life. On her 99th and final night of the original challenge, Maya sat by her campfire, surrounded by all the friends who had shared her journey. Sam was there with his collection of treasures and his boundless enthusiasm for exploration. Luna sat with her fishing equipment and her quiet wisdom about water and weather. River tended his beautiful gardens while sharing stories of aquatic adventures. Sunny smiled as she organized the community's supplies with her characteristic efficiency and optimism. The 4 rescued children, now confident forest dwellers in their own right, shared the fire's warmth as equals and valued community members. Danny managed the fire with expert skill. Katie displayed the beautiful fish she had caught for their celebration dinner. Alex showed off the waterflowers he had cultivated for the occasion. Emma coordinated the evening's activities with natural leadership ability. Sage sat in the place of honor as the community's elder and wisdom keeper, her eyes twinkling with pride at what the group had accomplished. Other community members filled the circle around the fire, each person having contributed their unique gifts to their shared success. As the fire burned bright and warm in the center of their circle, Maya stood to address her friends and family. "When I first came to this forest 99 days ago," she began, "I thought I was starting a survival challenge. I never imagined I was beginning the most important journey of my life." She paused to look around the circle at all the beloved faces illuminated by the firelight. "I came here alone, thinking I needed to prove I could survive on my own. Instead, I learned that the greatest strength comes from building communities where everyone can thrive together." Maya gestured toward the lights of other campfires twinkling through the trees. "We've created something beautiful and sustainable here, a way of living that honors both human needs and the natural world. We've proven that people can live in harmony with nature while supporting each other's growth and happiness." As she spoke, Maya noticed a familiar, large shadow moving at the edge of the firelight. The deer had come to witness her completion of the 99-day journey. But instead of remaining in the shadows, the great creature stepped fully into the circle of light and warmth. The entire gathering fell silent as the magnificent guardian approached Maya directly. The deer's presence was powerful but peaceful, and everyone felt honored to witness this moment of recognition and blessing. The deer looked directly into Maya's eyes with an expression that seemed to convey both congratulation and welcome. Then it turned its gaze to encompass the entire community, acknowledging each person's contributions to their shared success. Finally, the deer lifted its great head toward the star-filled sky and let out a call that was part song, part prayer, and part celebration. The sound echoed through the forest and was answered by calls from other creatures throughout the woods: owls, wolves, and various night birds, adding their voices to a symphony of natural music. When the forest's song faded into peaceful silence, the deer stepped back from the fire and melted quietly into the darkness, leaving the community with a profound sense of blessing and completion. Maya looked around the circle one final time before sitting back down by the fire. "Tonight marks the end of my 99-day challenge," she said softly. "But it's really the beginning of our lifelong commitment to this forest and to each other." She picked up her bark journal and made her final entry for the challenge period. But instead of writing about endings, she wrote about new beginnings, future dreams, and the endless possibilities that lay ahead for their forest community. As the fire burned down to glowing coals and the community settled into peaceful sleep, Maya remained awake for a few more minutes, looking up at the stars through the forest canopy. She thought about the scared, uncertain person who had first entered these woods 99 days ago, and marveled at how much that person had grown and changed. But most of all, she felt grateful for the forest that had become her home, for the friends who had become her family, for the challenges that had helped her discover her true capabilities, and for the future adventures that awaited them all. The forest around her hummed with gentle night sounds, the whisper of wind through leaves, the distant call of night birds, the soft bubble of streams flowing toward the sea. These sounds had become the lullaby that carried her to sleep each night, the natural music that marked the rhythm of her days. Maya pulled her plant fiber blanket up to her chin and smiled as she drifted off to sleep for the last time as part of her 99-day challenge. Tomorrow would begin day 100 and beyond, the start of a lifelong adventure in harmony with the forest and the wonderful community they had built together. As she slept, the forest continued its eternal cycles of growth and renewal around her, and somewhere in the darkness, the great deer kept its patient watch over all the souls who had found their home among the ancient trees. The next morning, Maya woke on day 100 to find her community already busy with the activities of forest life. But everything felt different now, not because anything had changed, but because she understood that her commitment to this life was no longer temporary or experimental. She had found her true home and her true calling. Over the following days and weeks, Maya and her community continued to grow and thrive in the forest they loved. They welcomed new arrivals who wanted to learn their way of life. They continued to explore and discover new wonders in the vast wilderness around them. They developed new skills and techniques that made their lives more comfortable and sustainable. Most importantly, they maintained the spirit of cooperation, kindness, and respect for nature that had made their success possible. Every decision was made with consideration for how it would affect both the human community and the natural world they shared. The rescued children grew into accomplished young adults who became leaders and teachers in their own right. The friendships that had formed during those first 99 days deepened into bonds that would last lifetimes. The forest community became a model that inspired similar groups throughout the region and beyond. Maya never forgot the lessons she had learned during her 99 nights in the forest, that true strength comes from cooperation rather than competition, that lasting happiness comes from living in harmony with nature rather than trying to dominate it, and that the greatest adventures are shared with people you care about. She continued to write in her bark journals, documenting the ongoing story of their forest community and the wisdom they gathered from their experiences. These journals became treasured resources that helped future generations continue the work of building sustainable, harmonious communities in forests around the world. And sometimes, on special nights, when the moon was full and the forest was particularly peaceful, Maya would see the great deer moving silently through the trees, keeping its ancient watch over all who had chosen to make the forest their home. In those moments, she felt a deep sense of connection to something larger than herself, to the eternal cycles of nature, to the spirits of those who had lived in the forest before her, and to the endless possibilities that awaited those who chose to live in harmony with the natural world. The story of Maya's 99 nights in the forest had become the foundation for something much larger and more important, a way of life that honored both human potential and the wisdom of the natural world. It was a story that would continue for generations, as new people discovered the same truths that Maya had learned during those transformative days among the trees. In the end, Maya's journey had shown that the greatest adventures are not about conquering or escaping, but about finding your place in the great web of life that connects all living things. The forest had taught her that home is not a place you go to, but a place you create through love, respect, and dedication to something larger than yourself. As the seasons turned and the years passed, Maya's forest community continued to flourish and grow, always guided by the principles of cooperation, sustainability, and harmony with nature that had made their original success possible. The story of their 99 nights had become a legend that inspired people around the world to seek their own paths to living in balance with the natural world. And in the deep forest, where ancient trees held the memories of countless generations, the spirit of adventure and discovery continued to draw new seekers who were ready to begin their own transformative journeys among the wise and welcoming trees. The campfire that Maya had first learned to build on her early days in the forest continued to burn as a beacon of hope and welcome for all who sought a life of meaning, community, and harmony with the natural world. Its light represented the eternal human quest for home, belonging, and connection to something larger and more beautiful than individual survival. This was the true magic of the forest, not the power to escape from life, but the wisdom to live life more fully, more kindly, and more sustainably than most people ever dreamed possible. Maya's 99 nights had been just the beginning of an adventure that would last for the rest of her life, filled with friendship, discovery, and the deep satisfaction that comes from living in harmony with the natural world and the community of souls who shared her vision of what life could be. The forest itself seemed to smile as it embraced all who came seeking this ancient wisdom, ready to teach the same lessons to each new generation of seekers who were brave enough to listen to its gentle voice and follow its patient guidance toward a life of true fulfillment and joy.